was kind of trying to shoot her from a camera on my lap there. We got a couple of those shots worked. I'm not the greatest operator. When I have a camera in my hand, it's because we just really need every every frame we can find.
Don't we have a responsibility to stop building if it's going to be in areas that are not defensible?
This is my home. This is where I want to be.
I love that town, and I'm not going to bail on it now.
We're coming back.
This is Variety's Doc Dreams, where we talk to documentarians about their recent films. We're here with Ron Howard, who's discussing his film Rebuilding Paradise, which follows the citizens of Paradise, California, after the tragic campfire incident destroyed their town.
As hard as it is to say it, I don't see the town coming back. A lot of people have left. The hospital's gone. The elementary school's gone.
We followed the families from Paradise for some of them for, like 11 months. We started off following probably, 20, 25. And there were some storylines that are interesting, but just didn't make it in. We sifted through a lot of archival footage. Of course, if you include the individuals and their cell phone footage, that was thousands of hours. We had 3 or 4 different photographers who came and went. Lincoln Else was the primary cinematographer.
Lord, pray for us.
We're getting out of here.
Oh my God. I need an ambulance immediately.
We are 100% surrounded by fire.
Multiple people trapped.
It's everywhere.
What was it about the city of Paradise that made you want to tell their story?
Well, I actually knew that town. My mother-in-law lived there for the last 3 or 4 years of her life, well, before she came to live for us for a bit. I just wondered how that community was going to come back. Because, it was devastating to be there just as the camera crews, the news crews were all leaving. The people who were there were sort of exhausted with people asking them questions. But when they recognized me, and I said, I'm curious about what happens next. My assistant then, who's also an exec producer on that film, Louisa Vellis, she actually said, maybe that's a film, Rebuilding Paradise. And I said, yeah, but I think it's a question mark. Look at it. These are the people who, they don't want any help. They've got that pioneer spirit. Self-sufficiency is a code of honor. And yet here they are.
Dad, but we're through, guys. We are through.
Can we get far away from Paradise?
Yep, we are.
The burning paradise sign was...
We would take 15 takes to try to get that shot. They're not as hysterical as you think they would be until they are. And I thought that was interesting to me. You wouldn't direct people to be quite that cool and together. But you also wouldn't necessarily know to have people in the sort of breathless sound where they can barely get the words out, even though they're trying to be calm. And then just the intensity of the emotion when things would break through. It was very surprising as it relates to fiction.
Oh, look at the clear sky.
Hey, clear sky, guys. Made it through. Made it through it, guys.
Rebuilding Paradise follows several stories. The former mayor, the superintendent, the school psychologist, a local police officer, a couple families. How did you go about finding these people amidst the chaos? And you said you had facial recognition and awareness due to your career, but how did you also convince them to let you film them in some of their more darker moments?
The fact is, there were a lot of people who we began following who fell away. Not so much because they stopped talking to us, but because they decided not to stay. They just left. So a lot of the people that we began focusing on were the ones who were innately a little more resilient. And they were kind of natural leaders. They were the ones who kept showing up. But I kept saying, we're telling the story of the individuals, we're telling the story of the town. In fact, I kept thinking it's a little bit like Thornton Wilder's Our Town. We're going to look at this town for a year and see what story it tells us. Is it really rebuilding paradise? Is it really not? What's it going to be?
I was particularly touched by the story of Michelle, the superintendent, and her incredibly tragic journey. What was it like watching this woman's narrative play out?
Well, her whole journey is heartbreaking. I had meals with John and Michelle, and he was a great guy. In fact, there was something that he said to me that we never got on camera. He had been on the Fire Safety Council. And a lot of his sort of PTSD that he was talking about wasn't just the trauma of trying to get out and escape the danger that morning. It was a sense of regret, tremendous remorse that he and the safety council had not won sort of more points within previous administrations and established more strategic exit points and safety measures and so forth that he felt would have saved, a lot of people and a lot of property. And meanwhile, Michelle was just unbelievably heroic. One day I just kind of rode around in the car with her, and I was kind of trying to shoot her from a camera on my lap there. We got a couple of those shots worked. I'm not the greatest operator. When I have a camera in my hand, it's because we just really need every every frame we can find. She, to me, is a lesson in tenacity and productivity.
At 7:30 in the morning, this town started to burn down. Within 3 hours, it was gone.
What did you learn through this process? You're a seasoned, skilled director, but what did this project teach you?
Well, trust the medium, trust the process. Human beings live lives out in sort of narrative cycles, all things that I probably could have thought about and come to understand on my own. But it was very apparent to learn from this brand of storytelling and this discipline. It's great to be around the documentarians, the shooters, editors. Remarkable, that process of discovery, which occasionally in scripted sequences you do, either because you had to shoot it in a sort of a spontaneous way, or you've discovered a problem and you have to go back and find footage and see if you can address it in a new way. And that's really what documentary filmmaking is all about. And the place where I actually contribute, I think, the most is sort of conceptual in the beginning, and then sort of ongoing, sort of saying, should we follow this line? How about this? We need an answer to this question. What can we learn? Because they're sort of narrative questions and they're character-based questions, things that I work with all the time. Although I can't fabricate a solution, we have to actually explore it and see what we learn.
I lost my house too. I'll tell you what, it's not easy.
No, it's not, but we're alive.
When dealing with real characters like Matt, the policeman, versus a fictional character that an Academy Award-winning actress is playing, are the pressures different?
Very different, very different. And I have to say that I don't really shine in those interview situations. I'm kind of good at getting the ball rolling, and I'm curious. I'm very curious. There are times in all of my experiences where the producer will step in and really help in the interview because they can recognize that there's really something about to be shared that's significant, and in a very patient, very human way, digging a little deeper. But it is the difference between being a real journalist, documentarian, explorer in that way. And I'm still a little green in that area. So I don't mind saying to Glenn Close, hey, let's try it again. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Or Amy Adams, let's have a conversation about how emotional this scene is, but pushing to understand what's going on with somebody like Matt or what it really feels like. Something that I'm learning to sort of find the right way into those conversations.
As a viewer, I do want to know, what can we do to help prevent these fires? And maybe you may have been more educated on it through the course of learning about Paradise.
We're seeing that whether it's a fire, a tornado, a flood, or a pandemic, that our sort of relationship to nature in the world is intensifying in terms of its risks. And I think we have to recognize that. And I would continue to suggest let's do everything we can do about global warming and climate change. Absolutely. But that's not the single solution now. Look in every corner for ideas that can matter. The tricky bit is deciding how to pay for it and how to invest in it. But I do think those conversations, they shouldn't be quick wins. It shouldn't be, forget about it. You'll never get elected if you advocate that. I think the problem solving, it needs to be more open and less politicized. And that would mean a lot. And that's one of the things that I was, just loved about those town council meetings is the thrashing around of ideas, and again, getting things done.
If we do not do this, FEMA will not pay for the debris removal.
This is BS. This whole thing, we are struggling to come out of a very, very bad situation.
I lost my voice.